Hello, I'm Jonathan Staiano and I'm going to talk about scar revision. Scar revision is something that we get asked a lot about here at the Staiano Clinic, and it is actually a little bit more difficult than I think some people appreciate. A lot of people say, oh, plastic surgeons, they don't leave scars, but we all leave scars. All surgeons leave scars. Anytime you have any surgery, you will leave a scar. And so when someone comes to us and asks for a scar to be revised, then we've got to think, how can we make that scar better? We can't get rid of a scar. No one can get rid of a scar. But there are some aspects of the scar that we might be able to improve upon. But one of the first things we have to do is isolate exactly what the problem is with the scar to see if it's something that we can help with. As I say, you can't get rid of a scar, but there are several aspects that can be improved upon. The first very important aspect is how long has the scar been there? Because all scars start red and obvious, they can be a little bit raised, and they take time for them to fade in their colour and to get flatter and softer. So really you don't want to think about scar revision until at least I would say a year after the scar has been made. You have to let that scar mature to get as good as it's going to get before you think about doing anything to improve the scar. The next thing is to say, okay, well, what is the problem with the scar? Now, if the problem is the scar is slightly red or raised or lumpy, then there are things that can be done. A red scar can be improved with laser therapy, can help with red scars. If scars are lumpy and raised, then this might be a hypertrophic or keloid scar, particularly if there's been aspects of delayed wound healing, then that is more associated with a hypertrophic scar. Or if there's any family history of lumpy scars, certain skin types like Afro-Caribbean patients have a bit more of a tendency to keloid scars, which are unsightly lumpy scars. And these can be helped with scar reduction sheets of silicone or silicone gel, or steroid injections are often very helpful for keloid or hypertrophic lumpy scars. And there are other aspects that can be used with keloid scars, such as excision of the keloid scar. People often come thinking that's the first way of treating it, but that's actually one of the last ways of treating it, because if you excise a keloid scar, there's a risk that it could come keloid again. So that's something that it's one of the last options. And also things like radiotherapy and other more invasive treatments can be used for keloid scars, but this is something that we really need to talk about in the clinic. The vast majority of scars that are slightly red, raised and lumpy will settle on their own, which is why you've got to leave it at least a year, and if it is settling, leave it longer before thinking of having any treatment, because any of these treatments carry with them the potential for complications, potential for problems. So leave it at least a year, and then these things could be considered. Other aspects of the scar that can be improved is sometimes we see stretched scars, like this scar here. You can see it's slightly widened, this scar on the cheek. And if you have a stretched scar, then this could be improved. It might be that it's stretched because it's been sutured under tension. It might be that it hasn't been sutured at all and just allowed to heal. And so if the scar is slightly wider than you would like, then it would be possible to excise the scar and create a new scar. So that's the first thing. You would still be having a scar, but it would be narrower than the original scar. It would still be as long as the original scar, but it could be narrower and made into a hairline scar as opposed to a stretch scar. Certain areas of the body are more prone to stretch scars, so like the leg and the back, and so these areas are likely to stretch whatever, but in other areas of the body it might be possible to revise the scar and make it slightly less stretched. The other aspect of scars that can be improved upon is if this scar is indented. Often if the scar tissue is going deep, then you get a contour defect where the scar is. Now this is something that patients often think is going to be an easy thing to correct because you can just cut it out and stitch it up. Now if you cut it out and stitch it up, you just get more scarring and it'll indent again. Initially it'll probably be fine, but it'll just become indented again. So what you have to do is there are techniques that we can use to try and get some tissue on top of the indented scar to try and improve upon it. Depending on how deeply indented it is, depends on how much of an improvement we can get. But the idea is to try and get some tissue underneath the scar to try and give it some padding so it isn't so tethered and isn't so indented. And this is something that is achievable with surgery. But again, a bit like the raised and the lumpy scarring, you have to give it time for it to soften and settle, because often indented and tight scars will soften and settle over time. The other aspect of scarring that can be improved on is the direction of the scar. When we make surgical scars on the body, we always try and make them in a certain line, in what we call the relaxed skin tension line. And these are lines where wrinkles will form in the future, and these are the best lines to place scars. So if we're making a surgical incision, we will always orientate our scar to be in the most favorable line or position, so that when it does heal and fade, it blends in with the contours of the skin. Now, if you have a scar that isn't in one of these favorable lines, then it will be possible to change the orientation of the scar to make it place parts of the scar. You may not be able to make all of the scar into that orientation, but parts of the scar into those relaxed skin tension lines, and improve the look of the scar. Also, by breaking up the scar, sometimes you can improve the look of it. But there are limitations to scar revision. As I say, there are aspects of the scars that can be improved upon, but we can never remove a scar. We can only try and improve on certain aspects of it. So I hope that's been helpful. If you've got a scar that you're worried about, you can always email it to us and we can have a look at it and give you an idea of whether it can be improved upon by surgery. Or you can come to the clinic for a free consultation and we can have a look at it and discuss the options. Be great to see you, and you can always comment and get hold of the clinic by clicking the link below. Thank you.